Hey yo! I wanted to make a video on Battlefront 2 because I've been playing it loads, even though it's quite old. Like, off the top of my head, it's like 10 years old? 9 years old? Something like that. Which, by today's standards, is, I'd say it's quite old. You know, you could have been playing a game from like 20 years ago, and it'd still be considered like relatively new. Depending on the game. Because, like, for EA, like, they pump out shit like nothing. It's just constantly new stuff. Mainly, like, the FIFA and Madden and what have you. All of their sports sort of stuff. Which is what they started with, so it makes sense. But, no, this is quite an old game considering all of that. But it's... I don't know, I like it so much, even though a lot of it's quite broken, which we'll get into later. But it had so much potential. I feel like it could have gone really far if they just stuck with like actually adding content to the game and, you know, keeping it stable. But unfortunately they didn't. I win, that's convenient. But anyhow, I should explain for people that haven't played Battlefront 2 before. The core mechanics is very much similar to a lot of shooters of the time, still the time now to be honest. You know, left click, shooty bang, swingy swongy if you have a lightsaber. Right click's ADS or blocking, like I said, if you have a lightsaber. And then there's all sorts of little buttons like middle mousing to melee, which is very strange. I don't think I know any other games that have that currently. And then you've got your abilities on the UI in the bottom right. One thing that I do think it makes it stand out quite well, which is definitely a positive, let me state that, because there's a lot of things that stand out about this game, like, you know, the whole loot box scenario, but I'm not going to get into that because that's a whole can of worms. But it has a mechanic where you can roll, like dodge roll, like similar to Dark Souls, but you don't get like the invincibility frames, the iframes. You just get resistances to, I think, explosions, and maybe like minor resistances to like blaster fire. But what's really cool about it is that even though you're like a bog standard troop, you can be fighting one of the heroes or the villains, and if you dodge roll at the right time, you can evade their lightsaber strike, which is like crazy to think about because, you know, you see in the films and even in the games. Like, someone who has a lightsaber is at such an advantage, it's crazy. Like, they can quite easily stomp any sort of regular troop, and it'd be no bother at all, you know? So it's really cool that they added something to give the little guy, like, a chance to last, like, 2 seconds longer. Because it is just 2 seconds. You get 2 seconds, and that's it. Oh, and of course there's also the vehicles. Vehicles are very much like an in-between for me. I like them, but I really don't at the same time. Because as like a ground troop, you can do quite a bit against like starfighters. But if it's anything like an ATST or say like one of the objectives like an MTT or an ATT. Not an ATT. Well, yeah, an ATT, but I was thinking of the AT-AT. It's, like, you can't really do much unless your team all work together. Like, for the objectives, they have so much health that you're basically dead. And that can be kind of frustrating, but, you know, it's part of the game. As you can see, dying is definitely part of the game. You die a lot. A lot. But for me, it's not a big deal. But yeah, I feel like vehicles could do with a bit of tweaking. Not that we'll ever see that, considering the game doesn't get its support anymore. Sad. Yeah, that's the basics, I'd say. If we wanted to go into something a bit more complex, I'd want to talk about the counterplay. Counterplay in this game is everything. So, you know, you've got your standard troops, the heavies, the assaults, the specialists, and the officers. And you typically tend to find assaults are good against specialists. You know, you sort of rush them down with the shotgun ability, speeds you up, and the shotgun ability at point blank. It's most of the time, like, I'm pretty sure it's a one shot if you aim correctly against any standard troop, unless they have over health. if it's an ability the officers can distribute. Oh god. Oh. But I think some of the more interesting counterplay, which is what you typically see against vehicles, because it's a necessity, it's 100% necessary, is the ion shot that you can get for certain guns, and the ion torpedo, which is the ability that the heavy has, as well as the ion, I think it's called a smart turret. And all of these are built for destroying vehicles, which is very, very convenient. Vehicles have a lot of health. Like the standard trooper, like this heavy, has 200 health, right? Just, you know, it's like, it's hard to gauge how much that is, because you think, oh, isn't 100 typically what, like, the max health is for most characters? And it's like, nope, see, the assault there has 150 health. Ignore the announcer. He's a bit confused and old in his age, so he doesn't really get what's going on. AKA, it's a bug. But, yeah, like, Officer Assault have 150, I'm pretty sure the Specialist does as well. Heavy has 200. Some vehicles have 3,000 health. Like 4 guys could all be sat shooting at it, and it barely do anything. Crazy how much health they have. So, like I said, ion shot, ion torpedo, very much a necessity. Back to Battlefront. Speaking of Darth Maul and villains and heroes, explosive shot, brilliant for getting through their block. I love the counterplay in this game because it means that you have like some sort of like resistance against whatever's killing the crap out of you. You don't just lay there and take it, you know? You get to fight back, even if it's only a little bit. A little bit, still a little bit, you know? It's not zero. It's not a horror game the second you see a hero or a villain. Yeah, I think the counterplay is really integral to a lot of what this game is, and I'm not sure if people overlook that or not. I hope they don't, because it's something to really appreciate, considering it allows everyone to just be like one big, like, collective that can be specialized in each, like, chunk of it to, like, deal significant damage to the enemy. So you could have a bunch of guys running ion shot and ion torpedo. You have a bunch of, like, a few guys running, like, explosive shot to deal with, like, heroes and villains, you know. And then if you vary, like, if you no, that's not the word. If you use various troops, there we go, that's words, you can counter a lot of the enemy troops as well. So I feel like you are rewarded for playing different like styles, considering most games, like especially I'm looking at Call of Duty, there'll be the meta weapon and like the meta attachments for it, and like that's it. If you're playing anything else, you're basically at a disadvantage, which blows, you know. Like, I don't want to have to run specific types of, like, one specific type of gun with the specific type of attachments. I like to have some variety. I like a sniper rifle every now and then. A nice powerful hand cannon's a lot of fun. And, you know, sometimes just shooting a lot can be a lot of fun. It can really bring you joy. So that's one thing I really like the game for, is the counterplay. However, I will address the rough spots, because boy, there are quite a few. Especially, like I said, there's no more support for the game. So, one big rough spot is the bugs. Oh my god, the bugs. They are everywhere, they're prolific. And it's nothing that's like... There's no, like, silly bugs. You know, when you spawn in, your character might be, like, upside down, or his hands are on backwards, you know? That's funny, but it doesn't break the game. The issue with Battlefront, a lot of the bugs break the crap out of the game. It does not work properly. Like, there's one that you see frequently, where when there's a new objective that's, ow. When there's a new objective that's announced for like players on both teams, the game just gives up, and the camera just decides to lock onto one position. And you can't move it until you respawn. Or, apparently I've heard, you can get mods for it. But I'm not even going to try and start modding something when I'm running a Linux system, because I feel like that is a recipe for disaster. Something else that does gripe me, quite... It's a big gripe, is the snipers. Oh my god. The snipers are so annoying. Because, like I said, there's counterplay with the assault, but like, that's assuming you don't get your your scalp blown off trying to get to the sniper to begin with, you know? And considering the whole shtick is keeping the enemy like at bay and doing precision strikes on like high priority targets. Which, you know, sounds like someone rushing through the front lines at full speed. So no, snipers can be quite the pain. But they're a lot of fun to play, so it's not the biggest issue ever. I just wish that there was more counterplay and they felt a bit more balanced. Actually, considering we're on the negatives, oh my goodness, I like doing objectives. I'm the type of guy who's the Logi truck runner in Armor, for example, where, you know, you're just driving back and forth, you know, hauling supplies, and very mundane but important. Like, it's important that someone plays the objective or else you lose, you know, it's kind of why it's called the objective to begin with, it's what you're there for. However, the objectives in Battlefront, as much as they like can be fun at times, like holding a point from enemies pushing, or, you know, targeting the big enemy bad guy vehicle like this, and it's a lot of fun when it's like that, but some objectives are literally just sit there and hold a button. And I mean, it's similar to the like holding the point objectives, considering that you can just get run down by like 5 different fuckers that just all sprint up to you and show you the meaning of a plasma bolt up close, you know. Yummy, yummy plasma bolts. But I want to do more than just hold a button when I'm playing an objective. I don't want to have to just sit there and wait while I hold G. That blows ass. If I'm being completely honest, it blows complete ass. Yes, you may be like, oh, but it's not the same as some other objectives in other games, and yeah, that's true, but that doesn't necessarily mean it automatically has value. Just because it's different doesn't mean it's better. Simple as that. Now then, since we've been taking the game apart, you know, exposing all of its nasty bits, what might be a good idea to cover the good bits, like the design parts of it that are nice, you know, the intrinsic parts of what makes it what it is, because that's important for any game, I'd say. Arguably the most important part. Like, if there's major design flaws in the game's gonna, it's not gonna take off, is it? It's gonna be stuck in the ground forever. One of the design flaws I think is really cool. Oh my god, the visuals are brilliant. They're so pretty. Like, they hold up today, no doubt about it. You definitely hear the memes of the whole, oh, graphics peaked like 5 years ago, you know, it doesn't get any better than this. I think once GTA 6 comes out, that'll probably put that argument in the ground, I'd imagine. Considering how pretty Rockstar's games typically are. But, well, the game, but how old it is and when it was made, no, it they nailed the visuals in my opinion. I think it's brilliant because it's quite highly saturated, so it still gives it that like unreal sort of like sci-fi feel of like, you know, this is a fight in space. This is fucking amazing, yo, it kicks ass. How like light-hearted it comes off, even though, you know, it is like a big old intergalactic war. And that visual style, like the visual like fidelity and quality, it really aids the gameplay. It makes everything feel a bit smoother and a bit more like congruent, I think is the word. It pulls everything together quite nicely to give you an experience that isn't very jarring and like makes sense, you know? Like when you're playing Fortnite, like sure the saturation's high, like everything's pretty clear considering it's relatively low poly. Oh my god. Sometimes it is impossible to tell what is going on. Like you'll drop down and there'll be Darth Vader fighting Peter Griffin and input like name brand character here, you know. It's just like a million guys. It's so hard to tell who's who and why they're there and what they're doing. Sometimes they're AI, sometimes they're players, sometimes they're player AI. Like AI looks and made to look like a player. And it just, not sure about anybody else, but it really throws me off when I'm playing that sort of game. And everything looks like it should be obvious, but it isn't. And then it makes me feel stupid, you know? But that's probably just a me problem. That's that's probably what that is. Another design choice that I think is brilliant. Their investment into the sound. And I'm not even gonna say, like, but most of the sounds are just cool from like the show and stuff. They're not that special. That's the thing. The movies and the shows and like a lot of the other media really got it right in terms of the sound design. So it means that the game sound design is also brilliant. You know, the basses sound like basses. And like the level up is like isn't egregious, but like, you know, it makes sense. And all of these small little noises and the important sounds play a part in building like the atmosphere. Like if the sounds are scuffed and they don't sound right at all, it will massively affect how you play the game. So I'm really, really glad that they got it right, you know? They nailed it on the head. And the last thing I want to cover, as much as they can be a pain in the ass when you're fighting them, is like the heroes and the villains and how they play. Oh my god, I have never played another game where you like hit a character and you're like, right, that's it, I'm about to kill, like, I'm gonna go on like a 10-player kill streak and ruin the enemy team. Because playing as a hero or a villain really feels like that. It really feels like you are just given like power. You are just able to flatten the enemy team and they can do little to nothing against you. And that's brilliant because you don't get that anywhere else, as far as I'm aware at least. Like, it just feels like it feels like in Overwatch, or but I'm not sure what it's like since I last played it, but a better example might be Marvel Rivals. Is when you're playing with your ultimate, you know, when you're ulting, and you just feel like for that few moments that you can kick major ass and nobody can do nothing. You're like you're the top dog in that situation, and it's a brilliant feeling. The heroes and the villains in this allow you to feel that. A sustained amount of time, you know, like it's not just like a 5 seconds and you're done sort of deal. And it is very much like you could be playing as a hero for a villain for a few minutes and you just feel invulnerable and brilliant. it really pulls you into the world and makes you feel like you're a Jedi. You know, you're this larger than life sort of character, just by giving you a lot of power. Then you're not invulnerable. As I said earlier, it makes you feel invulnerable. It makes you feel like you can just like stomp the entire enemy team. If you play poorly, you're still punished for it. That's brilliant. Like, so many games struggle with the whole balancing of like making you really strong, but also making you killable. You know. And I feel like they struck a really good balance. Bearing in mind it takes time to learn, because you've really got to temper your expectations of a hero or a villain, because you can fall prey to the whole, oh, I'm invincible, I can't be killed, I'm gonna destroy the enemies, and you just run into their front line and get absolutely ran through. You get minced, like, basically instantly. You know, I think that's also really good. Now then, closing thoughts for Battlefront 2. Very much, it's lots of fun. Once you get around all of the bugs and the little, like, bits and pieces that may rub you the wrong way, it's great. It's a fun time to just sit down and blast away at clankers, you know? I think that's mainly because of how everything ties together, you know? Ties together. Come on, it's like a TIE fighter, guys, come on. Fucking, you know, like, However, I will say, I will be the first to admit, it needs care. If you want to play for a long time, you're looking for that longevity, you're not gonna get it. Because it needs touching up. It needs bug fixes, it needs some redesigning. However, I will say that you can definitely have those feelings and thoughts addressed by the modding community, because they've done a really good job changing up the game for the better, I feel. But yeah, give it a go if you see it dirt cheap on like Steam or whatever platform you use. I know most people use Steam because, you know, it's kind of hard to find an alternative. But Steam kicks butt, so I'm not complaining. But yeah, give it a go, see how you feel about it. I think it's a good game. I think a lot of people can really just pick it up and enjoy it. And if you do, you'll be seeing me play Public Era. Have fun. Bye bye.